Okay, on the second part, we're going to cover texture layers, stencils. We're going to cover the GLSL and viewport, and how you can maybe use multi-texture instead in some instances, especially when you're painting on just one map. And then we're going to talk about saving images, the importance of making sure that your images are saved in your directory. Also, one thing I want to do very quickly is to get I want to show you how to make that vertex group that we were talking about. I forgot to show you how to make one. I just showed you that they existed. So going into object mode and going to the this is the object data panel. Here we got the vertex groups, and what I can do is make one group just for the whole object, just to make that easy. I've got nothing selected here. If I've got everything selected, it's pretty much come down to is just you're going to hit a plus sign here that makes a default group. You can name it for what you want, so I'll put full mask and hit assign, and then we'll deselect, and then with this full mask I can select, and then if I want to actually eliminate a different one, I can say select the side ring up on there and hit deselect, and then you'll see I now have a custom selection. It comes into play when we start painting, because if I go to texture paint mode with this enabled, face selection masking for painting, that means I can only paint where the highlighted white areas are, and that'll prevent me from making mistakes on things that I've already established. That's especially like when you're working with say bump mapping, and you've already set something up and you don't want to accidentally erase it. And it also could be for like stenciling and such, but we're not ready to do the texture paint yet. I'm going to go back to edit mode, deselect all of that, and then go into object mode. Now I want to talk about the GLSL. We've got this turned on right now, and that enables us to see the maps that we have already established, but that's not good enough to just have the one map. We want to put all of them together. The way GLSL helps us is that we can see the effects of all the layers as they're being used. So what I'm going to do is actually start loading up images as my layers here. The thing about the texture stack is that it works the opposite direction in Blender than it would, say, in Photoshop or GIMP or even Illustrator or Inkscape. I think even my paint works in the other direction, where this image slot here is the bottom, and way up here is the top, and you keep adding the top. That's why the plus sign's there, I think. It's because you can keep adding beyond. The first one I'm going to go for is to load. I'm going to load up just the images that we have made already, and I'm going to hit plus, and I'm going to choose that AO, and it says it's already mapped to UV, and it's set to color, but I'm going to change that one to multiply. Okay, and I'm going to actually move it up the stack, which is with the down arrow button, so that it affects the things underneath it. Let's go ahead and keep it in here for right now. Okay, and then just below that I'm going to add another image, and I'm going to choose the well, let me open up where the tutorial textures are. I'm going to open up the dirty vertex. I'm also going to have that one set. It's already set for UV, but I'm also going to set that one for multiply. And you'll see that we're really starting to get really dark. The color value, I'm going to put 0.25, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other one, the ambient occlusion. 0.25. Okay, here's the thing. This is one of the things that I really I need to be sure that I'm doing correctly. Is that here I've got the ambient occlusion, but it just says texture, and there it says texture 001. That will hurt me later on when I'm using the layer manager add-on, or if I'm using the Google Summer of Code layer manager, because it'll show me just these textures. I won't know what they are. So what I need to do now is name this AO, and this one vertex dirt, and that way I know what I'm dealing with. Now I'm going to add the color map just underneath that. So that one, and open, and back to my baked maps, and there's my color. And what you'll see now is that actually we're seeing everything that we've got stacked here in the viewport now. And you might not think that it's actually working right, but believe me, this is actually going to help us when we start working with this. If you can think of it kind of like what we do with Photoshop, then it'll probably help quite a bit. But I need to set up 3 more layers here. I'm going to set up a bump map. So we're going to make a new one. I'm going to call that bump. And the reason I've got it at the bottom of the stack, or it's actually at the top, but it's going to affect all of it. And I'm going to make a new image, call it bump. And we're going to make that 50% gray. So I go to the HSV and go to the value, put 0.5, and hit OK. That's because the white we want it to go up and the black we want it to go down. So I've got it set now. Instead of color, I'm going to turn on normal. And then we're going to have to make sure we got it set to UV. Since we had not opened that up before, I want to go to the bump image, go into tab into edit mode, hit A, and you'll see it loaded up the other image, the ambient occlusion. So I need to load up the bump behind it to make sure that now this knows that these UVs line up to this image this way. It seems kind of funny, but that's the way it works. Okay, I also want to make a new image to go under the this color texture, but I want to have it to like a metal color. So new, call it metal, and I want it to be dark gray, and we'll hit OK. It's already set up for UV and it's already set up for color, and that's fine, but I need to call this textures slot metal so that I can keep track of it. Also, I need to do the same thing. Go into edit mode, come here to metal, and there I go. I've got my metal. And now I want to do a stencil between the metal and the texture. What I want to do is paint on this stencil and have it to where it cuts away the this color texture. Oops, I forgot to label that. Okay, it'll cut away the color and reveal the metal. So I need a new image. Call that stencil. I'm going to make that white. Hit OK. And we're going to have it colored, but we also need to turn on RGB to intensity, and I set that to white. And I turn on stencil here. Okay, and the same stuff. That texture slot, I need to call it stencil so I keep track of what's going on. Then I also need to tab into edit mode and make sure I bring up that stencil and have the UVs on top of it, so that way I will be able to actually use this. Okay, before we get going too far, I want to show you how the texture painting works in the viewport. I'm going to cover more painting topic after this, but the first thing I need to show you is just how these layers work. So with this stuff set up already, I'm going to go into texture paint mode, and I'm going to work on just a selection of just the plating that we had, the decking. And if you notice, I've got two different areas here. This up here on the left is the Google Summer of Code stuff made by Sci-Fi that makes the active layer of what you're painting on. But over here is the add-on, and this one is the texture paint layer manager. So I've got stencil set up here and bump over there, and I already found out the hard way that this one over here overrides this one. So I need to put that on bump, and that way I can see what's going on. And I'm going to use a custom brush that I've already made, so I'll bring that in. File, append. There's plating. Make sure that it's actually got the right texture. Nope. Figures. Okay, really quickly, when you've got something where you've made a change and the icon is not the same as the brush that you started with, we can go to the brush textures up here, and I can go navigate to where that correct image is, choose it, and open it up, and it'll be assigned to it. I'll go back to my bump. Okay, I've got everything selected with the mask, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to go back to edit mode, hit A to deselect, go to my vert groups, and I want just the decking. So I'll select that, go to top view, and then I'm going to go back to texture paint. And with the GLSL working, I think we should see this start to come up on the bump if everything works out. I've got this set to tiled, so it should work that it will fill the entire area as I draw it. To see the mask, if you're I hope this is coming out on the video, but since I've already started, I've just got to keep going back and forth and wait for it to update, because this is a 3D program, so it's not guaranteed to have the best reaction. Because it has to calculate projection and all kinds of other things. But a big kudos to Anthony, who goes by Sci-Fi on blenderartist.org. He's done a lot of work. Ideasman, which is Campbell Barton, has also done a lot of work on improving the texture paint. And okay, now I go back to object mode, and I'll rotate around, and now you can see that I've actually put a bump that looks like a metal plating. And let me see how good it looks. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and you can see that the cloud noise that I put in that brush actually makes it look like I've got some sort of metal going on, and that's very, very good for the most part, to be able to have something that quick. Like I said, the layers on the textures, what I'm going to do now is to show you how you can cut through on that stencil. So I'm going to touch the stencil there, and I'm going to bring up the stencil itself in the viewport here so that you can see it. And since the stencil's white, I'm going to use black, and on the curve I'm going to use a very sharp curve that's just flat so that I've got full power when I'm painting, because I want you to see what happens with the reaction. And I'm going to pretend like I've got an area over here, and I don't think I set my power right. Now up here you can set your strength for pressure sensitivity. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to have my radius manual and strength manual, and in the viewport I'm going to hit F to make my brush larger and smaller. Start out pretty large first, then Shift F, and closing the circle makes it stronger. I'm going to close it up all the way. And I'm blocking in a large area, and I'll add to the area with small strokes later. But I want you to see what happens when we have these areas painted through. Okay, and maybe I go with a larger brush. And the brush itself right now looks kind of it looks too even, and we'll fix that in a little bit with some smaller brush strokes and more cracks and other things. And also there's because of this decking, we can go back and paint back in with white on parts of it to bring parts of it in. And I'm painting here. It's actually paint. You'll see it update over here in the viewport. You'll see it where it's actually kind of connected. Okay. And we're actually starting to see it. So I put in object mode real quick, and we're actually painting through on the stencil. So that's really good. Now what I need to do though is make sure I save that image. Save as image and stencil, save, and then that saves that status. I'm going to open up that bump, and it's got the pattern in here, and I'm going to save that. Now I tried using the layer add-on for saving my images, but when working with smaller images like this, it was saving at full float, and 16 megabytes is a lot for a single image. Okay, in the next part we're going to cover the brush creation, and we'll work on more of this painting as I go, and I'll show you more what you can do with the brushes and the textures. Alright.